to the Copy Blogger Podcast. My name is Tim Stoddart. We have our first interview that we've done in quite a long time. Well, my first interview, I should say. And we have a very special guest. I still don't know exactly what to call you, so I've just been calling you Mr. Bored through Twitter. And in this case, Mr. Bored, I actually don't know enough about you to introduce you properly. I don't know your real name. I don't know what you look like. I can kind of get the glimpse that you're American from your accent, and that's about it. So before I ask my initial question, I need you to really do me a favor and introduce yourself, your avatar, your character to my audience, please.
Yeah, no one's called me Mr. Bored. I kind of like it though.
I like it too.
Yeah. So, my primary mode of communication is writing via Twitter, and I'm Bored Elon Musk on Twitter. I have a 9-year-old account, and I started this Twitter account kind of as a joke, as like a writing exercise, and basically wanted a comedic prompt of what's like a fake internet character that I can sort of build off of. And at the time, real Elon Musk was starting to get more popular, putting out lots of crazy ideas, and it kind of just struck me like, hey, it would be funny to come up with a character that was loosely based on Elon, and really just focused on like what he thinks about when he's bored, right? When he's taking a walk or sitting on the can. And so that was it. It was kind of like, this is all just like a joke that's gone way too far, but I've always loved this idea of comedy. I've always loved comedy writing. I just need constraints. And so I gave myself this constraint. And 9 years later, I've built up a pretty big following, and the real Elon continues to be quite a popular or, villainous character, depending on how you feel. His stardom has kind of helped me grow in visibility as well. So in terms of what I can tell you, my identity has remained a secret for 9 years. As you alluded to, I do live in the United States. I'm a human person. I enjoy comedy. I enjoy video games. I enjoy crypto stuff. I enjoy exploring and learning and having conversations like this. That's about all I can share without, revealing the mysterious person behind Bored.
Fair. Totally fair. And thank you so much for coming on the show. You and I have kind of developed like a Twitter friendship. It seems like over the last 3 years, all of my friends come from Twitter. And so I really appreciate you being here. When I had my personal pod, I would start every interview with the same question. And it's something that I feel comfortable doing. And so I'm just going to apply it to the Copy Blogger pod as well. The background photo on your Twitter handle, not your actual face avatar, but your background photo. Where does that picture come from? What does that mean to you?
So it is a photo of an astronaut walking up a set of stairs in the middle of outer space, and the stairs lead to what you could assume to be the planet Mars. It's a little bit of a light nod to real Elon and his quest to get humans onto Mars, but I think it's also just kind of a nice metaphor for me, like my love for solitude, being a bit of an introvert and sort of staring out into space and wanting to explore more. And the actual artwork itself was just a really cool piece of art that I loved, and I ended up buying it, and I decided to make it my background. So it means a lot of different things, but it feels fitting both for the sort of parody account that I am, and also sort of my personal way of thinking.
Yeah, well, you've mentioned comedy, you've mentioned art a few times, even within the short conversation that we've had so far. Do you consider yourself an artist? Do you consider yourself a writer? If I had to say like, hey, what are you? What, in the context of Bored, what would you say? Are you an artist? Are you a writer? Are you a gamer? Are you a crypto enthusiast? Like, how would you define yourself?
It's like really hard to say this without sounding full of myself, but I think about a lot of people who lived through the Renaissance times, like a Da Vinci or a Michelangelo, and they were artists, sure, because, the traditional sense of the word is like they painted pretty pictures or sculpted, but they also did a lot of things, right? They have sketchbooks full of inventions and writing and philosophy. And yeah, I've done a lot of different things. I think that the term artist can be very broad. I think if you're a writer, you are an artist. I think if you are somebody who does performance art, I guess you could say that is an artist. Like Andy Warhol was less of an artist in the traditional sense and more of a performance artist. So is Banksy, right? So is like Shepard Fairey. So I don't know. I don't think I would ever call myself an artist, to be honest with you. I'm just a multidisciplinary, curious person who spends most of their time writing in the context of social media, and talking. And then ultimately, like when I look back on sort of my body of work, it's going to be a collection of a lot of little things versus sort of one big thing that I'm known for. I think that's probably the way it's going to go.
Yeah, it's not the way it always goes too, because especially in this world of, personal branding, the first thing you want to do is say like, I'm about something, like this is my niche. This is like the thing that I represent. This is my main idea. But then when you do that within the context of you and like your personality, you realize that I'm actually about an infinite amount of things. And it's so hard to really like label people into these perfect, well, I shouldn't say other people. I'll speak for myself. It's been very difficult to label myself into a thing that I am so that I can be known as that particular thing. And I think that's a real struggle that a lot of artists, but mostly writers, have to deal with, where they need to find themselves through the constant screwing up and like breaking the mold of what they thought they were yesterday. Does that make sense to you?
It does. And I talk a lot about the importance of pseudonymity, right? And like not necessarily doing your art or your work with your real name, right? With your legal government ID. And part of the reason I think that's important is that you can dabble in a lot of different things and have a different identity or pseudonym for those things. So in my case, Bored Elon comes with a certain set of background information, that I shared with you. You don't know where I went to school. You don't know what jobs I've had. You don't know what art I've created sort of as my real world self. And so I don't necessarily come with all of those potentially prejudged elements. And so maybe Bored Elon is my character or the version of myself that I do this particular form of art, which is, tweeting funny stuff and coming up with ideas. But maybe I'm a musician and I have another ID for that. And maybe I'm a painter and I have another ID for that. So I feel like people who worry a little bit or worry about, sort of how to identify yourself, like you can always spin up a new identity and build a reputation for doing one or two specific things and just leave the rest of your identity out of the picture because it's not relevant to what you're doing, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. And I wrote that down. Obviously, pseudonyms and fake profiles is a new topic of discussion as of 2 or 3 days ago. And so I'd love to touch on that. But first, let me like start the actual show now. Let me, I just
sponsored by blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, right. So you started your Twitter account because you wanted to write, you said, and You said something in there that I've been thinking about a lot over the last couple of years. I actually discovered you through my friend Jack Butcher. Jack lives in Nashville like me, and I know that you were on his podcast. And one of the lessons that Jack taught me that I think about all the time is the value of restraint, the value of like really forcing yourself to work within a very, very specific set of parameters. And then the creativity is actually manifested through that restraint. And man, it's something that's changed my writing a lot. And you had mentioned it before. And you had mentioned that this character and this persona really like force you to work within these set of parameters. So as a writer, as a comedian, as somebody that's trying to build your brand, tell me how restraint plays a role in that.
When you're looking at a blank piece of paper, somebody who says, "Oh, I'm not creative," they are intimidated by that. And it's not that they're not creative because they can't think of things to put on that paper. They're not creative because they can't think of constraints to give themselves. They can't think of the prompts that will actually lead to that output. And so I think for me, I also fear a blank piece of paper or sort of no parameters for what I'm doing. And I've practiced giving myself restraints because once I have a few lines to color within, I can do a lot. And I think most people can do a lot. But again, it's just like they lack the practice of giving themselves those parameters. So Jack is such a great example. Like his parameter, I think, for those who don't know Jack and visualize value, he tries to distill very complex ideas and philosophies into as few visualizations as possible. Like make a very simple graphic that says a lot. So his constraint is using very few pixels, right, to articulate a whole slew of information. And that's an awesome parameter. When you see his output, it's just a few lines and circles and what might look like something that, should be in a PowerPoint, but it's really hard to do what he does. In my case, I could write a lot, but for that writing to be good, it needs to be focused and it needs to be within, some sort of a framework. And so the framework I gave myself was, what if I was an eccentric billionaire who had downtime and wanted to solve common problems that were not that important? So what would that lead to, right? And so the bulk of the first few years of Bored Elon Musk was just that was the writing prompt. It was like silly inventions, kind of these Rube Goldberg-esque solutions that were really complicated ways to solve stupid or silly problems. And that's what I needed. So yeah, I mean, I think that, like, I guess for anybody who's listening or watching, you really have to give yourself as many constraints as possible to increase your ability to be prolific and to create, art or writing or whatever it is. And then over time, the blankness, like the blank page will become less scary because your mind will sort of create the constraints for you. And it won't feel like such a chore. That's hard to put into practice, I know, but I think just to kind of circle back on like your original question, yeah, like it's incredibly important to have constraints in order to be a creative person, because otherwise you're just making noise that doesn't really seem to have any sort of connectivity.
Exactly right. And the phrase that I'm sure somebody said this before me, I'm not trying to like coin a catchphrase, but what has been going through my mind a lot is, if you can do anything, you end up doing nothing. Or like, what do you do when you can do anything? And the answer is, you don't know, right? You just kind of scribble around. It's like, if you had to play every single instrument at the same time, you wouldn't get any music, right? But like, if you say you got these 4 strings or 6 strings and, these 7 notes or whatever, then all of a sudden music manifests itself. And I think as artists and people in the world of creating, it's such an important framework to live by, because if you don't have it, you'll drive yourself crazy because you think that you need to always be creating something new and always creating like the next masterpiece. Whereas in reality, you just need to create something that plays within a set of rules.
Yeah. And we live in a world where there is an abundance of, information, of content, something that can always take your attention. And so in order to stand out, I feel like you need to be somebody who can create some consistency and constraints in that consistency, to build an audience. I think that's super important. I mean, even applying it to like restaurants, most restaurants that are, Michelin star, top reviewed, their menu is 8 items. It's not Cheesecake Factory with 500 different items. Sorry for anybody outside the US listening to this, but it's a bad restaurant with too many things on the menu. But a good restaurant has not that many choices, because you don't want to paralyze your audience with choices. And also the chef does not want to dilute their ability to create, beautiful food by trying to do too many things.
I love that. Okay, let me transition a little bit to you and what you're working on. It seemed like this started as a joke. Those are your words, not mine, but it's gotten pretty serious. I mean, let's be real. You got almost 2 million followers on Twitter. You're building a business. You have like a real brand and a reputation. Well, you know what? You tell it. Your product is in the crypto space, and I understand it pretty well. I think crypto and gaming is probably like the only intersection where this is going to happen for the next 10 years. Maybe, who knows, but that's my feeling. So as a content marketer, as someone that's built an audience, as somebody that has a lot of eyeballs on you, what are you trying to create and what are you trying to present to this audience now?
I always think about this Venn diagram with 3 different circles, and I've often referred to it when asking people what they want to do, like for a job or for work, and it's basically, what are you good at, what do you like to do, and what will people pay you to do? And the thing in the middle is like that's the thing you should do. For me, I have this real world experience working in the video games industry for over a decade, so I know a thing or two about gaming. That was not something that I really shared via Bored Elon Musk because it really wasn't part of the character, especially early on. But over time, I sort of started to reveal more and more about the real person behind the account. What will people pay you to do? Well, as a floating green head on the internet, you can't necessarily set up any kind of business, right? It's a little harder to run like a coffee shop, but you can get paid to do cool things in magic internet money, or also known as crypto, without necessarily having to spoil the secret of your identity, which I will continue to say I keep a secret only for fun and because it's part of the brand, not because I have anything to hide. And then what do you want to do? Well, I like games. I like innovative technology. I like to be on the forefront of things that are emerging that might change society in a fundamental way. I was a very early user of the internet, computers, all these things, and I feel crypto is kind of another wave of that. And so all that came together and led me down this path to kind of refocus what Bored Elon Musk is about, and it evolved, right? It's not just sort of this one dimensional like joke. I still try to do a little bit of like what the original purpose of the account was, which was these silly inventions. But yeah, it's become more of a, diversified voice and a character that, also has a reputation, has credibility, that talks on Twitter spaces and podcasts and all these things. And it just so happens that, crypto and gaming are just two of, my interest areas. And so I've really kind of shifted this account towards that. But I waited a good 8 years, I would say, until I ever tried to monetize this big megahorn that I've created on Twitter. I wanted to build a really strong reputation, especially as somebody who's operating where you don't know my government ID. I needed to make sure that people could trust me. And I'm happy to say that is the case today. And there are a lot of people who will vouch for me. But yeah, once I felt like I had built a strong brand and reputation, and that, there were people who would stick up for me if there were ever questions about my authenticity or my intentions, I felt like it was a good time to actually, start a business. And that involves many things. It's investing, it's advising, it's partnering, and also it's building my own gaming company called Boardbox. So that's kind of where I'm at today. It has, as you said, become a very serious endeavor, meaning that I left my real world job a while ago because operating as Bored Elon became much more lucrative for me than operating as my real identity, which is a funny thing to grapple with that most people will probably never go through. But yeah, I finally realized that it was time to take one of my identities and focus more on the one that was having the most success. So here we are.
This is really where I want to focus, at least to get your insight on it. And I guess I need to give a little bit of background of what I'm thinking. I have always been in the lead gen space. It's only been the last 2 years that I started creating digital products, and digital products seem very big and infinite, but I have found that all digital products, or the vast majority of them, it's focused in like the internet marketing space. Basically, you create ebooks to help people build brands. You create membership sites to help people become better writers and build audiences for themselves. And it's rare, although in my opinion, it's a mistake, that more people don't create brands like outside of the brand awareness space and create a product that has nothing to do with anything about building a following. So, I've been in the healthcare space for a while, and one of the agency that Copy Blogger owns is called Digital Commerce. And I know it's kind of a weird esoteric example, but I think it's important to get some context, where they built an entire brand that helps women who have had C-sections give natural birth again. And you wouldn't think that something as specific and just kind of weird, a little bit taboo, would have such a brand around it. But man, they are crushing it. They're absolutely crushing it. And they get asked sometimes from people like me to come on podcasts and be like, wow, like, how did you build your brand? Like, what did you do? How do you build your Twitter following? And it's just like, no, like, I don't care about any of that shit. I'm here to serve my customer. I'm here to serve these women who have a specific need. And so with that in mind, I see what you're doing and I see what crypto is doing, and especially in the gaming space. And all of a sudden I think to myself, like, wow, there's a whole slew of products that could be created now that aren't, courses and membership sites and ebooks and paid newsletters. There's just a whole new world out here where your imagination really is the limit of what you can create and package and sell to your customer. So this is a little bit of an open-ended question, but somebody who gets how to create a crypto product, not necessarily understands crypto, but understands how to create like a packageable product that you can then give to a consumer. Like, where do you see this lens of new products going? How is this going to hit us all?
I think ultimately, like most products that are not these like consumables or sort of necessities for life, in other words, like food, clothing, whatever, a lot of these products can be basically made digital only, right? So a lot of products, especially in the United States, that are sold, their actual product is the feeling that it gives you. This is luxury products. It's a lot of different accessories you might buy. It's things for your house. It's information. It's music. It's games. And so for, pretty much all of human history, we've been used to like this transaction of I give you money or gold or whatever, and I get a thing, a physical thing. But that has rapidly changed to I give you money and I get a thing that is made out of bits and bytes, right? And this includes Spotify subscriptions, on-demand movies, video games where there's no cartridge, and even luxury products, right? Like NFTs in particular have really shifted the narrative of I don't need this Rolex watch or fast sports car to show that I'm wealthy or doing whatever. I can have this really expensive JPEG. And as silly as that sounds, it still serves the exact same purpose, right? Like you look just as stupid driving in a yellow Lamborghini as you do putting a Bored Ape in your LinkedIn photo. And so fine, like that's where we're at. So basically, if you basically are somebody who has ever sold a product that isn't just pure information, you've created a feeling in someone, a customer, and you very potentially could recreate that in a digital format. And once it's just purely digital, I think your biggest challenge then is just onboarding and growing your customer base and helping them understand why there is no difference between the digital, format and the physical format. And me coming from gaming, I've seen this writing on the wall for a very long time because it's been at least 10 years where most people in gaming or players have basically embraced the idea of I don't need physical media anymore. I don't need the CD for Call of Duty. I can just download the file and I own that game and that's enough for me. So I think that's going to basically translate to so many other verticals and industries. I don't know how long it will take, but I do think it will happen, and we will sort of move away from this physical reliance on so many physical things and shift to just digital.
How do you think this is going to be adopted from a consumer? Because there's layers to it. It doesn't just happen all at once. I get my movie at Blockbuster, and then like, oh my god, I can get a DVD mailed to me, and I still got to put it in the mailbox. And then all of a sudden I can get a DVD in my house. And then all of a sudden I can just download the app on my phone and I never touch the physical stuff again. And now we're at this next layer where the games that I used to play so when people say metaverse, like it's a thing, the metaverse is already here, and it's been here. It's just the duality of ourselves and then the digital worlds that we live in. And so the gaming space in particular, I feel creates this new set of products that is like one level up. It's kind of like the Netflix did Super Saiyan to where you don't have CDs anymore and you can just stream everything. And now it's the gaming space is almost kind of like the Netflix one more layer deep. And I'm curious if people are going to be able to figure that out enough to create like a mass commerce around it, or if it's still going to be something on the fringes.
Yeah, I mean, it still feels like something for for a small circle of nerds to like get excited about. But, if you do take the gaming example, there are hundreds of millions of people who spend time every day playing video games. And so there is a market for this. I think that it ultimately is going to come down to where we spend the most of our time. And people don't like this idea or sort of coming to grips with the fact that they spend more of their time online than they do in the physical world. And they sort of like believe that because they don't have VR goggles on their face, that they're not stuck in this metaverse,
exactly.
Whatever. But we are all looking at our phones for a very long time. So effectively, we're already there, right? And so if we're spending most of our attention on a digital screen already, it does make sense that, value can exist in the digital things that can be viewed and interacted with on that screen. I think it's all here. I think it's just like a shift in perceptions that people have, and mostly just like acknowledging that it's okay, because it feels taboo. Like, yeah, I always tie it back to gaming. I feel like, but when somebody is on the bus or like at home even, and they're playing like some mobile game, there's a little bit of embarrassment. Like, oh, I'm on my phone and I should be doing something productive, right? And like playing Candy Crush doesn't feel productive. I feel shame, right? I'm going to put my phone away because I don't want someone to see it. So there's still a little bit of this reservation of people kind of accepting that it's okay to like give their attention and their creativity to digital things and digital experiences, but it will come. The last 25 years has shown how rapidly our society can change to being more digital, and the smartphone being kind of the path towards that existence. So yeah, it'll take time. I think people who basically embrace this and try to steer it towards a positive place versus us being just like zombies staring at a screen are doing good work. And I think they're also entrepreneurial and trying to get ahead of this trend that is kind of inevitable.
I'm just going to go down this path because I'm fascinated by gaming. I was a StarCraft player. Like, this is a writing show. And, like you just said, I don't want to tell people that when I was 13 years old, I was totally fascinated by like RTS games, but I was. And I still would play. This is really going to age me and nerd me. But I was getting really bad wrist problems from playing it. So I basically like just had to stop playing because I got fucking injured, However, when I saw the stadium that sold out from the League of Legends tournament, and when I see the Call of Duty stadiums sell out regularly, I mean, I think that the gaming space, for brands, even if somebody is interested in just building a brand, maybe it's a paid newsletter, something that we're all a little bit more familiar with and isn't so high level as, like crypto games. There is such a huge underworld of people that makes the Super Bowl and the NBA and all of the dumb shit that we listen to and we talk about in the office look like child's play. We're talking like hundreds of millions of people that live in these worlds and play these games. The problem with it is that there's so many different organizations coming into the space that like nobody actually knows who's in charge. And I think this is pretty hysterical. The irony of, the beauty of crypto is that it's decentralized, but all the freaking thing needs is like somebody to be in charge and centralize it for it to really take off. So for people that are listening to this that maybe played games or are interested in the space or hear this and think like, oh, wow, that might be kind of a cool opportunity. I'd be willing to give that a shot. What would you tell them just in regards to the market of maybe PC gaming, console gaming, or even crypto gaming? Like, where's this whole thing going?
I mean, as a entertainment vertical, it's massive, right? I mean, you can find lots of data that points to the fact that it's bigger than the movie industry at this point. Yeah. And if you think about it globally, it is probably capturing far more attention than other media formats if you don't count social media, which is probably number one. And I think that it does have the potential to overtake traditional sports. And I think part of that is because there's this feeling of like anybody can maybe make it, right? So with traditional sports, your physical, talents do dictate whether or not you'll be able to play professionally. Practice is great for sure. But if you're not, 6'5" or 250 pounds or able to run a quarter mile in 8 seconds, you're probably not going to compete in the Olympics or play a professional sport. Whereas with video games, even though realistically 99.9% of people cannot play competitive League of Legends, for example, there's at least a chance, right? It's not really based on your physical abilities. And so I think that's really appealing to especially like young kids today who don't want to play in the NFL or, professional baseball. They want to be like, a Call of Duty superstar or a Minecraft legend or like, creating content on Twitch or YouTube. But it commands a lot of attention. And the most scarce resource basically today is attention, because there is a plethora of people who are making content. And so if there are a lot of eyeballs that are spending time on gaming, it's a worthwhile consideration to think about how can I live in that ecosystem. It doesn't mean you have to be a pro gamer. You could be a content streamer. You could be a reviewer or a critic. You could be somebody who works with, somebody who is a pro gamer and you contribute to their business. It's a very lucrative business if somebody is, playing at a professional level. In my case, I'm acting as like a curator of games and I'm trying to introduce people to new games. There's a lot of angles I think you could take. And then when it comes down to products, like if you're a good writer, if you're a good artist, if you're a good musician, a lot of these things can then be applied to people who are building games. They need people like you as well, right? Because a game is like this piece of art that really requires so many different talents. It's design, it's music, it's filmmaking, it's, game mechanics creation. And so I think there's a lot of opportunities there. And I think that the majority of people who work sort of, as creators or as creatives, they sometimes don't think about gaming as an industry to join. They resonate with more traditional things like movies and TV or, magazines, but gaming is going to be bigger than all of them. And in many cases, it already is. So it's hard to kind of narrow down where people should go. But I do think that it's important to study the space and to analyze, is the world of video games a place that I can sort of grow, my own brand and monetize or, contribute to a big company that needs people like me.
I agree completely. I'm going to change directions, but I just want to give one comment on that. I know two people. One of them is my friend and another one is just somebody that I know of. The original bass player for a band called Incubus, his name was Dirk Lance, and he quit touring the world in his probably Rock and Roll Hall of Fame band because he got a deal making music for video games. And I still follow the guy. He makes so much money. It is ridiculous how much money he makes. It's silly. He just built a studio in his house and he records, like undertone tracks. And it's almost like being the orchestra in a movie. A lot of these video games have in-depth storylines and he does all that. So anyway, that's one. And then speaking of storylines, I have a friend who was a writer friend of mine who quite literally writes the dialogue for games. And so I'm only saying that as an add-on for you to talk about, like, yeah, you wouldn't necessarily think that gaming is a space to go in, but I think about it all the time. Other than healthcare, which is just something that I really feel is the biggest opportunity in the world right now, I think gaming is probably just as big of an opportunity because it's so worldwide. Like American healthcare is a little bit more entrepreneurial than the rest of the world, but gaming is such a worldwide entrepreneurial space. So anybody listening to this thinking like, where do I want to go next? I really, really invite you to check this space out. Okay, so there's my comment. We got about 15 minutes left to wrap this thing up. I want to dial down about just your plan so we can at least end on a little bit of strategy and some tactics on how you are transitioning the attention that you bring to your audience to your gaming. Are you selling your products yet? Is it still in beta? Have you totally launched it? Do you have like a plan to launch it? What's your strategy for that?
Yeah, so the product is for sale at boardbox.io. It is at this moment a very small group of consumers or customers. Basically, it's people who are into gaming.
Your site's awesome, man. Did you make this?
Yeah, we have a great team and worked with a few outside contractors and continue to do so. But yeah, thank you. Definitely some retro vibes there that we leaned on. But yeah, it is available. I mean, we're going after sort of a high end and specific, group of people who are into games and understand crypto. And, funny enough, I kind of think about it in the context of what Tesla did. Like Tesla started selling electric cars. When they first launched, I mean, not a lot of people were interested in electric cars. So they went high end. Let's really win over those people and build something that's beautiful and then slowly trickle down, expand our market share and make the cars cheaper. And that's kind of what we're doing too. As more people get more comfortable with digital assets and games that do have sort of blockchain technology enabled, we're going to try to reach more and more traditional gamers. At the moment, we're not quite doing that. We're basically building a business for like 10,000 people on Earth, which is not that big, right? We need to expand. I think in sort of answering your question about like what's the strategy, right now the language, the messaging, how we sort of like attract people can be very crypto centric and very technical. But as we want to basically lure the more traditional gamer who has never touched crypto in their life, we have to change how we talk. We have to change the language we use and why our business is appealing. And ultimately, my goal with Boardbox is that 2 or 3 years down the road, when traditional gaming companies like Blizzard or Epic or Activision, EA want to launch games that are, on blockchain, they will come to us to help onboard their new users. That's the lofty goal, but we're not there yet. So as we work towards that goal, we're going to slowly start to change how we write and how we communicate with people so that it becomes more friendly and educational and less focused on the small group of nerds who kind of get what we're doing.
Do you have an example about how you have changed your language to make gaming, especially blockchain gaming, a little bit more conversational and a little more appealing? Give me an example.
Yeah, a really simple one, and I think a lot of people are taking this approach, is at first we referred to the game items as NFTs, right? And so the average person doesn't know what that stands for. They've never heard that term. And some gamers have heard of it and they don't like it because they've read that those things are really bad and they're just rugs, or they're just scams, and they don't really help gaming. But when you call something a digital item or a digital game asset, then it's no different than what they're used to, right? Like if I played Fortnite and I got a skin for my character or a new weapon, that's just a digital item. I get that. So that's a very small example of how you just make something a little bit more broadly understandable and appealing and don't get sort of lured into the technical jargon. And I think a lot of technology and electronics companies have done this. Apple being a really good example of that. Their competitors will talk about like OLED screens and megapixels and all these things that don't mean anything. But Apple's like, it's one of the best looking screens available. Our camera is sharper than anyone else's. It's a very like old playbook, right? And so it's no different for what we're doing. It's just simplify, talk about what the benefits are, not about the technicals that get you there. And hopefully that will attract more people who then won't be put off by sort of this overwhelming language that they don't understand.
Yeah. The benefits and the functionality of it. I totally agree. If you were to just call it an NFT, you would immediately get compared to what people think of as an NFT, like maybe a collectible or maybe like a signaling device. But the reason why, and I would actually love your comment on this, the reason why I think gaming and blockchain are a perfect little match is because there is functionality involved. And you hit the best example. Everybody always thinks, I don't want to live in the metaverse. And then I tell them that Fortnite doesn't charge for a subscription and they're probably the most profitable game, like maybe in history. And all of the stuff that they sell is accessories to a digital character. So you're quite literally making digital shoes and you're selling them. And we think nobody would ever do that. And then I say, all of your kids are doing it all the time, like billions of dollars worth of digital shoes. You don't understand. And so that simple change in language where it's not an NFT, it's an accessory. It's a digital accessory that you can use in a world. I totally see how that would work. So what's your comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, any product that basically is a luxury good or that you spend more money on because it looks good or makes you feel good and basically does more than its basic core function is the same as an NFT. Like the Air Jordans you can buy at a Nike store, they cost $5 to make them, right? And maybe they should charge you $25 for the value you're getting, which is keeping your feet covered and not stepping on broken glass on the street. But you pay $300 for them. And that delta between what you probably should be paying and what you're willing to pay is easily translatable to digital assets. And so people just need to kind of get over that hump and realize that like we've already been spending money on stupid things in the real world, and we're going to continue to spend money on stupid things in the real world and now in the digital world. And perhaps over time, more money will be spent on the digital world than in the physical world, because in the digital world, your shoes won't get dirty and they won't get stolen, and you can actually use them and not have to put them in a glass display case so that, they're protected forever, so that you can eventually sell them on eBay and never actually enjoy them. So that's my rally against physical goods and why you should use digital ones.
Yeah, I love it. This is the part about crypto that excites me, and I feel like I'm saying the same thing over and over again. I guess just to end on a crypto space, there's two of them in particular. There's getting rid of middlemen, like brokers, basically. Sometimes I think like, why am I going to pay so I'm moving soon and we're putting our house up for rent. And I'm thinking to myself, why on earth am I paying all these middlemen to do a thing that I could just do on blockchain? And even if I'm selling my house, I think real estate and selling real estate and just getting rid of all of the brokers is an actual use case that I could see that could happen. And then making it so that digital products are transactionable in a digital world is the second use case. And I see a whole new opening of digital products that people can create and make a ton of money off of, because we already have a lot more money than we know what to do with. I know it's kind of like arrogant to say that, but this is just the times that we're living in, right? We all have abundance. And so people are going to spend money on things that they don't need. And I think they're going to spend more money on digital products so that they can have like the perfect representation of themselves that they can display to the world, and that's where I see it going. Maybe that's a little cynical, or maybe that's a little too like, I don't know, what's that book and that movie that everyone always refers to where they're in the gaming world?
Oh, Ready Player One.
Yeah. Maybe that's a little too Ready Player One, but I really agree with you, and I think it's really exciting.
No, I mean, technology has been displacing middlemen for a very long time, and it's happening. Yeah. This is not even crypto related, but I think it's not a good time to be a middleman, right? If that's like your job, you should try to switch your career, because there's only two paths for a middleman. One is you're going to be displaced by tech, or you have to be the biggest middleman ever to succeed, which is like Amazon. But there's not many of those. And most of us won't be that. So yeah, be basically direct to your consumer, produce a product that somebody wants, and technology is going to help connect you to that end consumer, eventually, if they aren't doing it already very efficiently.
For sure. All right, Mr. Bored Elon, thank you so much. I really mean it. Thank you.
It's a great conversation.
I was a little like, is this going to be a weird guest for people? But the more I thought about it, the more I think it's more and more appropriate than ever, because you really are a representation of the future, and you really are a representation of how we are going to transact and exchange commerce online. It was really great talking to you. You sound like a great guy. I think we'll probably be friends in the digital world one day. Oh yeah, and I forgot to do the traditional boardbox.io. Anybody into gaming, go to boardbox.io. You can follow Mr. Bored Musk at Bored Elon Musk.
It is, it's currently at Bored Elon Musk. Yeah, I'm trying to potentially change that handle, but for now it is at Bored Elon Musk. And sincerely, if anybody has questions about gaming, just tweet me. I'm always happy to answer and educate. I will take time for anybody who's interested.
Cool. All right, bro. Thank you so much for your time. Anybody listening to the podcast, if you enjoyed the show, give us a like, give us a subscribe. It's the best thing you can do to support the show. We appreciate all the good words that we get from you. And we'll talk to you next time. See ya.